Salutations Rangers, General Bradley 101 back again with some more lore. Surprised to see me so early? Yes, this is a special episode because we recently got a Captain Tier member, Miss Tori. I believe I called you brother in the last episode.
Flashback.
Oh, my brother.
Oh no.
Yeah, my bad. Look, it's not my fault, okay? Like 95% of you guys are boys, aight? And remember, there are no women on the internet. That was a joke, by the way, because I know somebody's gonna think I'm serious. But the generous Miss Tori signed up with our Captain Tier, and if you didn't know, if you sign up with the Captain Tier, you get to request one special video from me that I will make. And lo and behold, Miss Tori wanted me to cover the Sons of Helios Space Marine chapter. So that's what we're doing today. The Sons of Helios are a minor Space Marine chapter that made an appearance during Mephiston Revenant Crusade, part of the Mephiston series. My lord, interrupted Antros. I may have found a way to harness Mephiston's power. I spent the last weeks fighting alongside battle brothers of the Sons of Helios chapter. They have survived in the shadow of the rift all this time because they can endure themselves to the warp currents. Then they may be heretics, Codicia. Have you considered that? Of course I have, but I do not believe that they are. They are not even psychers, my lord. This is exactly why they are so fascinating. They follow a rigid martial discipline that I have never seen before. I've read of it when they were stationed on Baal, but I had to see it for myself. Procalius shook his head. This sounds worse the more you tell me about it. My lord, I understand your concern, but they are not what you think. These are warriors, not witches or mystics. They have simply homed their martial regimen until their minds are able to ignore the warp. I believe they tread a new path between the material and the immaterial worlds. That sounds exactly like mysticism to me. Far from it, my lord. They have just lost their homeworld, their fortress monastery and most of their battle brothers, but not one of them shows any sign of losing their powers of logic or wavering in their devotion to the Emperor. They hail from an unknown founding, unknown chapter, unknown lineage. They are said to have a sapphire and crimson color scheme, though it's unknown how exactly the pattern is arranged. But what we do know is that they had a homeworld of Tokarion, emphasis on the past tense there, for at the advent of the Secretix Maledictum, the chapter's homeworld would be sundered and lost into the roiling tides of the malevolent warp, leaving them but one single outpost left, what was originally known as Sarek Station. However, in a melancholic despair, the chapter would rename it to the Horns of the Abyss. Once it had gently rested in the gravitational pull of Dragomir's homeworld, Tokarion, but Tokarion was gone, devoured by the Great Rift, along with the fortress monastery that Dragomir had once called home. The Sons of Helios were now a refugee chapter, rootless and homeless. The Horns of the Abyss were a recent name, of course. Before the arrival of the Great Rift, the facility had been called Sarek Station, but as it slipped slowly towards destruction, it had taken on a more sinister persona. The facility consisted of two orbiting spheres, linked by a cage of granaries and struts. Each of the spheres was several miles in diameter, peppered with anchorage points and weapon batteries, but the close proximity of the Great Rift had warped and mangled them, giving the station the appearance of a leering horned skull. It hung over the madness of the Secretix Maledictum, like a man clinging to the cliff edge. Even now, purposeful charismatic tendrils surrounded it, preparing to drag it down into the hellish blaze. And thus the remainder of the Sons of Helios continued on watch, silent wardens over the grave of their long-dead world. There was, however, until the station got the attention of a Chaos Warband. You see, the station sat right on the edge of the warp rift. That means that they were the first target to anyone emerging from the other side of it. And lo and behold, a massive Chaos Warband appeared, and the Sons of Helios would be overrun. So terrible was it that they could not complete a full retreat, with many of their brothers having to be left upon the station, whilst the chapter master known as Dragomir managed to escape with some of his brothers. From here it would appear that the Sons of Helios' journey had finally come to an end, but fate would throw them a small mercy, for they would come upon Antarios, a librarian of the vaunted Blood Angels. Dragomir would then ask the powerful Psyker to aid him and his squad to reclaim the Horns of Abyss and save the brothers left on there. Antros would agree, yet when the force reached the station, they would discover a terrifying and horrific truth. The Sons of Helios that were left on the station had been corrupted and transformed into Plague Marines. It is unknown if this was done on their own volition or by forceful conversion, but given the Sons of Helios and their nature to avoid the warp, and their ultimate end, it's safe to say that this transformation was not consensual. The Sons of Helios and the Blood Angels, in a vaunted moment of pure rage, declared that they would wipe the station clean, and reclaim it for what few Sons of Helios remained, whilst putting down their wayward brethren. The battle would be brutal, a close-quarter slugging affair, bolted blade and narrow corridors of a space confine. Yet that was the easy part. For slowly the station itself would begin submerging into the warp, as both real and unreal space began to bleed in a unnatural conflagration. So potent was it that Ontario's began to fall to the Black Rage, the psychic malefications of that vile curse being amplified tenfold. Yet the brave son of Sanguinius would not fall this day, for Dragomir and his sons of Helios would save him. For here Ontario's would learn of one of their practices, a simple mantra known as the Sleepless Smile. Antros closed his eyes, lost to the bloodlust, his mind a conduit for wild unearthly power. He did not see the sons of Helios attempting to run towards him, battered by the whirlwind that enveloped him. He did not see the jaws of the great rift open around the horns of the abyss and drag it from the material world. For a long time, Antros knew nothing but rage. It consumed him to the point where he could not recall its cause. All he knew was the animal need to roar and thrash, punching his way through the intangible shapes that seethed around him. There was only blood, shadows, and hate. Shrieking wraiths clamoured around him, pawing at his mind, babbling curses, drowning his soul. He could feel all trace of sanity slipping away from him, and he recalled how Helios had warned him to stay away from the Great Rift. Antros' rage grew as he realized what a terrible mistake he had made. The mutants had driven him into the arms of the damned. If he did not halt this plunge into madness, he would become a plaything of the ruinous powers. He howled as he fell, but there was nothing he could do. The rage had taken him. He had succumbed to the age-old madness of his chapter. He gasped in disgust and agony as his mind slid inexorably into the abyss. Then, with his last trace of consciousness, Antros saw a light. No, several lights. He realized, glimmering in the pitch black, cool, unruffled flames, quite different from the maelstrom that was consuming him. He stared hard at the lights, throwing his mind towards them, seeing something wonderful and then implacable dignity. As the lights filled his thoughts, they took shape, becoming a row of kneeling, praying space marines, their heads bowed against their weapons, mirrors clutched in their hands, dangling silver chains. It was Dragomir and the sons of Helios, motionless on the deck of the hangar as a tsunami of color whirled around them. They had centered themselves, becoming one with the eye of the storm, unbreakable and inviolable. Even as the galaxy collapsed around them, they whispered a faint mantra as they prayed. We dream, dreaming, dreamed. When Angeros had been saved, and the two departed the station as it was succumbed into the warp, Angeros would inquire as to what that was. Daromir would tell him that it would be a simple mantra. The Sleepless Smile was a mental discipline that each and every brother of the chapter practiced. It was meant to ward and protect against psychic malefications, for the sons of Helios advocated for martial purity, and they despised any and all forms of witchcraft. Thus they sought to present themselves as witch slayers, one of iron mind and silver blade. It is an agora, a sacred mirror. The icon on its back is the symbol of the Sleepless Smile. Dragomir held out his arm, and Antros saw the same symbol, 4 staring eyes, engraved into Dragomir's golden vambrace. Behind Dragomir, the other sons of Helios' brothers bowed their heads, as though in prayer. The Sleepless Smile, muttered Antros, looking more closely at the mirror, fascinated. The Sleepless Smile was a mental discipline Antros was so keen to learn of more. It was a form of meditation, but the chapter master had been frustratingly vague each time he asked for more details. The mirror is a doorway, leading us to purity and strength, said the chapter master once. Once an acolyte ascends to full brotherhood, I entrust him with an agora, so that he may begin to walk the Sleepless Smile. It is a difficult, inward journey. These are not the psychic arts that you might employ. We do not project our souls through sorcery. We simply find the center of our being, and our subconscious can reveal hidden truths. It takes determination, but over time, it will ensure the strength of our minds and their purity, so we can be inured to the predations of the ruinous powers. These last words were intoned from the sing-song formality of cant, and Antros guessed that Dragomir was quoting from one of the chapter's sacred texts. And it seemed to work. While Ontario's was able to ward off the psychic malefications of the Black Rage, and return back to his state of sanity. He would then thank Dragomir before setting off to find his superior Mephiston to supposedly tell him about a cure that he found for the Black Rage. Yet there would be no happy end for the Sons of Helios, for as Dragomir and his remaining Astartes returned to their ship, the Chapter Master would suddenly be beset by a vision, for it turns out the Sleepless Smile was not a manifestation of psychic wards, but rather a manifestation of a psychic curse. For it turns out a demon prince of Tzeentch, wishing to corrupt the chapter to his service, had implanted this as a masquerade generations ago. For the Sleepless Smile had been discovered by the Sons of Helios after the advent of the Great Rift, and that was by no coincidence. The demon used the thinning veil to implant in this so-called protection against evil. Every time it was chanted by the chapter, it would not protect their souls from the vile machinations of the warp, but rather bit by bit chip away at their soul, until all of it belonged to the demon. For the Sons of Helios had not been guarding themselves from the manifestations of psychic evils, rather they had slowly been selling their souls to them. The visions came quicker than he had ever known. In just a few short minutes, his mind ascended from its physical manifestation, leaving behind the concerns of the flesh and rising to the inner path. His self vanished, and ahead of him sprawled a vast road. Finally, Dragomir reached the pilgrim and placed a hand on his shoulder. The pilgrim turned around and the light blazed brighter. For a second, Dragomir was too dazzled to see the face that he had spent his whole life seeking. Then, the pilgrim stepped closer, and fear flooded Dragomir's veins. There was no face inside the pilgrim's hood, only the long, bleached beak of a bird's skull. It looked blindly at him, but it was not just the absence of a face that caused Dragomir to recoil. The hooded figure moved in a horribly unnatural way, flickering and jerking like a badly edited piece of picked footage. As the demon's voice filled Dragomir's mind, utter despair crushed him. He knew, from the first syllable, that his mistake was far more profound than he had ever suspected. His entire life had been a lie. The path he had led his chapter down ended not with the Emperor, but with this damnation. We dreamed, dreamed, said the demon, its voice a chorus of whispers and screams. Its robes billowed as serpents spilled forth from beneath the cloth. A forest of black-eyed snakes seeped out and enveloped Dragomir, the dislocated jaws gaping revoltingly wide as the snakes devoured him. Dragomir saw through the glare with horrible clarity. Finally, he had the revelation he had sought for so long. All the pilgrims had turned to face him. They were standing in silence, thousands of them, with their hoods thrown back. None of them were human. They were a menagerie of animal parts and drifting limbs. The banners were not imperial relics, but the vile, decadent symbols of chaos. Beyond them, the great gates had opened, revealing the throne. There was a god there, to be sure, but not the god Dragomir had sought. Dragomir's soul screamed as the serpents consumed his mind. But infinity comes, said the demon, laughing ever so softly. And so ends the Sons of Helios, forever lost, no one sure of their fate. And that, ladies and gents, is the story of the Sons of Helios. Not that much there, because, well, they only appear once and they died, so yeah, it's unfortunate. But I'm actually a very big fan of this story. I really do love it, because it shows you the fate of many Space Marine chapters. During the Sixtadix Maledictum, many people were rather upset by it. Because, oh, a bunch of chapters straight up died, but then they were revived by the Primaris. Now, well, yes, you can see this as GW making a nothing burger out of it, and oh look, nothing happened. But I prefer to see it from a different light, if you will indulge me. I prefer to see it that this was supposed to be the coming of the second wind. The Imperium reconquering what it was supposed to be. The advent of the Primaris Marine was supposed to be a rebirth of the Imperium, to craft it into something new, something better. It was supposed to be the final weight that would tip the balance. Instead, because of the advent of the Sixtadix Maledictum, it became the one thing that prevented the Imperium of Man from falling apart. That and Bobby G running around doing God Almighty knows what type of magic tax. I tell you what, son, LRTD can motivate a man. Yes, sir. But while so many Space Marine chapters were lost, they were only replaced by the Primaris. Imagine if they had it. Imagine if the Primaris reinforced a fully strength Sons of Helios chapter, or at least a half strength. Imagine that. It's unknown if the Sons of Helios were reborn as Primaris, but that all depends if the Imperium knows what happened to them. If they did, they would be able to restate them. But then again, that's 1,000 Marines dedicated here, rather than creating a brand new chapter. A little copy? Maybe. But hey, it's one way to see it. But this is a perfect example to me of a chapter, a good chapter, a solid chapter, a chapter dedicated to preventing spiritual corruption, and one of martial prowess being corrupted by Tzeentch. It's perfect because this is such a Tzeentch employ. Hey, you just suffered a massive blow that left you spiritually and emotionally vulnerable? Oh, well here's this thing that will prevent that. Oh yeah, where'd you get it from? Don't worry. You were looking for something? Here it is. Circa a couple years later, and lo and behold, yes, your soul now belongs to me. Welcome, my servant. That is diabolically Tzeentchy, and I love it. It's the perfect Tzeentchian scheme. It's so subtle, and the fact that it's not the main plot of a book, it's even better, because this is what Tzeentch is. Subtle. I love it. I love it so very, very, very much. I also love that what little we did get about the Sons of Helios, we still got a lot to their character. Most notably, they have great tribal tattoos, they have great massive beards, they also had a very strong emphasis on martial prowess and martial strength and spiritual purity. His burnished, master-crafted armor reflected the madness of the storm, blazing crimson and sapphire, making it hard to see him clearly. He had removed his helmet, and Antros was once again taken by the strangeness of his tattoos. Every Sons of Helios battle brother wore a tribal-looking design on his face, but the chapter master's was by far the most elaborate. Every inch of his skin was inked with intricate, menacing black lines, like Scrimshaw, depicting trembling rays of a burning sun. Like many others of the chapter, Dragomir had a long, carefully plaited beard. When he removed his helm, the chapter master pulled his beard from his armor and allowed it to tumble across his chest in a way that, to Antarios, seemed barbaric. The Sons of Helios were far from barbaric, however. It had taken several furious battles to reach this point, and Antros had been constantly impressed by their calm, unshakable dignity. There was something humbling in their determination. The more he watched them resist the madness of the Great Rift, the more he felt they held the key to Mephiston's dilemma. If he could understand their strange relationship with the Warp, he could share their skill with the Chief Librarian. But when you combine all that with their name, it starts to make a little bit more sense. Helios is the god of the sun in Greek mythology, but more specifically, he was known as the god of oaths, and because of the oaths, of martial prowess, with many warriors making an oath unto him. And then you take a look at the culture of the Sons of Helios. The tribal tattoos, the long bushy beards. Now initially you may think, oh, maybe something Viking themed, which, fair shout, but I would argue something a little different. I would argue these boys are Thracians. Yeah, you take a look at Thracians, very martial, long beards, tribal tattoos, worship the sun god. Well, not specifically, but every single guy worshipped the sun god because, oaths and shit. But, hey, Thracian Space Marines? That's something pretty unique. Am I stretching a little bit with that one? Just a little bit. But I love the idea. It's the idea that you have a chapter with so much history, so much culture, so much flavor, just introduced and killed off in one book by perfectly logical means. Yes, I know I said Tzeentch and logic in the same sentence. Humor me. It is the perfect example of what 40k is. Incredibly unrealistic, but not without a bit of realism to it. And terribly grimdark. I love it. Sons of Helios, great story. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that has been the Sons of Helios chapter and their story. I do hope you guys enjoyed it. To Miss Tori, I do hope that I did you justice. I am so terribly sorry. There is literally not that much lore about these guys. There's a couple paragraphs in a Mephiston book. So yeah, I hope I did you good. But I want to say a massive thank you guys for watching. And even more massive thank you to my awesome members and Patreons. Massive shout out to my Officer Corps, starting at the Captain tier, Miss Tori. We then have our Lieutenant tier, with Mr. Eddie V3, Miss Major of the Void, Mr. Curtis Studies, and Miss Tori. Massive shout out to my Sergeant tier members, Mr. Damiak, Mr. Warsmith the Fireheart, Mr. Andy McGee, Mr. Bowen, Mr. Sean RL7, and Mr. Matthew Merrill. Massive shout out to my Corporal tier members, Mr. Tremaine the Math Kitty, Mr. Lord Rosarius, Mr. Tech Priest Toaster, Mr. Bowen, Miss Shauna Smithers, the Gentle Salamander, the Winch of Warhammer, and finally, but absolutely not least, shout out to my amazing private tier members, Mr. Thomas Moslons, Mr. Ivan underscore SBW, Mr. Monkey Man, Mr. Michael Ayeda, Mr. Diego Castro, Mr. Fortisunum, Mr. CMD Nay, Mr. Eric Massaro, Mr. Dom Marek, Mr. Ken underscore Sakura 333, and Mr. Matthew Peter. Thank you, I love you, I appreciate you. Sign up today with our memberships. If you want your own video, join the Captain tier. But if you just join with the $1 private tier, you get a bunch of other awesome benefits. But remember, this will always be free. So whether you give your boy $1 or not, I will love you just the same. Mwah! But ladies and gentlemen, I've been the General Bradley 101. You've been beautiful, awesome, and amazing people. Thank you all so very much for watching. Y'all make sure to say hello out there, boys and girls. And I will catch y'all next time. Dismiss, Rangers. God damn, bro, I love Greek-inspired chapters. More, please.